So our next panel is going to be focused on the General Services Administration. We're going to have Andrew Underhill, GovernmentCIO's Chief Technology Officer, lead this panel. He's going to be joined by panelists Omid Ghaffari-Tabrizi, the Acquisitions Lead for the Centers of Excellence at GSA, Dan Pomeroy, the Deputy Associate Administrator for the Office of Information Integrity and Access with GSA as well. So could I have all three join? Welcome to the stage. For the people in the back area near the coffee and whatnot, we have plenty of seats here to the right. And just for that back area there, we are recording this, so if we could just keep the voices down in that area as well is going to be very important. So I'm going to hand it off here to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name's Andrew Underhill, as Michael said. My role is CTO at GovernmentCIO. It's good to see some familiar faces here. We've got quite a following now. So, my role is to really go across the agencies and bring innovations, technology-wise, to the table, to stimulate that sharing of technology-based information. But we're not here to talk about that today. So, as far as GSA is concerned, I always like to understand the why. Why are you actually doing these things? Why are you trying to transform, etc. So I was wondering what initiatives, policy-based initiatives or government directives are driving change. Maybe start with you, Omid.
Sure.
Sorry, you didn't introduce yourself.
All right, introductions.
Do that first.
Sure. So my name is Omid Ghaffari, acquisition lead over at COE. We are a team of 3 on the acquisition teams over at Centers of Excellence. So please recognize that when you send information to us, I will be the one reading it. So don't hesitate to send emails, grab us, whatever it may be. There really aren't that many of us.
Are the other 2 here?
The other 2 are not. They are in meetings covering for me because we are at a few agencies at this point. Yeah. So working with the team that we do have, all of us play our own individual key roles. And my role in particular is to handle a lot of kind of the pushing of the project management side. I have a technical background, so I translate some of the requirements into acquisition speak. And then since I was a contract attorney, I actually do help kind of draft and write up the procurements themselves. So kind of that jack-in-the-box role is what I really got to do to keep the ship moving.
Thank you. Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Pomeroy. I'm from the General Services Administration. I work in the Office of Government-Wide Policy. There's an IT policy group that I head up. We manage the .gov registry for the United States. We help with federal identity credentialing policy, Section 508. We help adoption there. We work with federal agencies to improve their capital planning procedures through the ECIPIC program and through TBM. And we also work towards cloud adoption and data center optimization. So that's kind of a grab bag of different types of policies. They all intersect acquisition. And all of the different policies that come from the executive branch have a definite downstream impact on one or multiple of those programs. One of the things we do for identity credentialing is we produce the approved products list for PIV credentials and PACS, physical access control equipment. So there's a strong procurement intersect there where those pieces of technology have to be policy compliant in order for companies to do business with the government. So there's a lot coming down the pike. We're excited to see the final version of Cloud Smart as it arrives, and also the new data center optimization initiative.
So, Omid, from your perspective, how are you supporting those initiatives that are coming your way?
So some of the initiatives that Dan was mentioning are very focused and specific. The identity credentialing, for example. But I think building some of those requirements into our procurements in general is one of the ways we support those. For example, standing up OCDO offices, right? Office of Chief Data Officer, something we're doing at HUD right now with COEs. Those are the ways we support some of those specifically focused initiatives. But I think this may be, I guess, a little bit backwards maybe, but one of the ways in which we support some of the initiatives related to modernization at COE, I think, is in essence trying to work ourselves out of a job. centers of excellence should not exist. If we're doing procurement properly, we shouldn't have legacy systems. We shouldn't be stuck with old 10, 20, 30-year-old systems that we're spending more money to maintain it and keep it up and running than we are improving it and coming up with those new features and things like that. So I think a lot of the things that the folks before us were saying as far as, working with the users themselves, really trying to build flexibility into the procurements, not going for those, I think someone said a couple hundred, line item contracts. Things like that really help push the envelope in serving the intent of those policies, much more so than perhaps the letter of the words, because as we all know, it takes a lot of time for things to happen in government. So flexibility is key. Building that into our procurements is, I think, the best way we can support any initiative, whether existing now or coming down the pipeline.
So anything to add on that, Dan, in terms of, what are you actually, you engaged with the COE effort, for example?
In a previous life, I was one of the directors of one of the COEs. Yeah, so we spent a lot of time working together in U.S. Department of Agriculture, which was Agency 1. The great thing about those types of initiatives is that it accelerates everyone's timeline. It forces us to not settle for the mediocre long time limits that we put on things. Oh, that's 4 months, that's 5 months, that's 7 months. When we really push down to brass tacks and say, what can we get done in the shortest amount of time, with the air cover to do it with senior leadership, which is a key component, and focused attention. And industry was extremely helpful. We had very short turnaround times for industry. I know Omid was directly involved with those for the different RFIs and for the different procurement steps that went out. So having that level of cooperation and goal setting to not settle for a long time frame was really, really exciting. That was one of the best parts of working on the COEs.
So can you talk about any specific BPA activity or that you've helped, you feel is driving change within the GSA environment? And I know it's not just the GSA, right? Because you work with a lot of your customers, the outside agencies.
Absolutely, yeah. The BPA was the Discovery BPA. That was the result of a lot of lessons learned from the work we did in Phase 1, both at USDA and HUD. And I think it was also a wonderful example of how important working with industry to develop our solicitations really is. If you go back and look, so we put all of our procurement documents on GitHub. If you COE-whatever, look for it, you'll be able to find it on our GSA organization. And one of the things that you can do, go look at the Discovery BPA evaluation factors. The first one we put out in our draft RFQ, it was more or less a standard one, a couple of pages of technical volume and an oral interview, and let's see what happens. It was feedback we got from small businesses who are specialists in certain niche areas that we really wanted to get help in, information security, customer experience, change management, things like that, that said, your process is not going to let the true technical champions show how good they really are. The way you're doing it is the standard way where these big companies who have specialized in creating wonderful responses are going to just win the day, and you're going to be stuck with the same old, same old. So the feedback we got in that RFI, remember, it's 3 of us, we're sitting and reading it, right? We got that, it said to come up with that challenge question, which other folks before us were talking about. Come up with a scenario question, which focuses on the soft skills related to getting stakeholder buy-in. Because while we do have top cover at COEs, the agencies we go to work at may either A, not necessarily have that top cover, or B, may not have that bottom-up support. So by making sure that the vendors that we're putting on our BPA are actually attuned to some of those kind of political and personal relationship management issues that need to come up to make something stick when COE is long gone was an important factor. And only after going through those series of kind of let's see how good you are at doing your work questions did we get into the longer sort of response where we sit down and say, okay, let's really get into the details, the brass tacks of what this proposal is. So that entire evaluation process was built on industry feedback. If it weren't for folks in industry that are here right now responding to our RFI, emailing us, setting up meetings with us to talk to us, and really give us your candid thoughts I mean, if you beat around the bush, I'm not going to be able to read your mind, right? Tell me exactly what's working and what's not, because that's the only way we can really learn, right? So one of the things we have done, actually, the GSA COE Twitter handle has it kind of pinned at the top. We've put our templates online this week to say this is how we build out our documents, our market research, our acquisition plan, our RFQ are all there, and we want your feedback. Tell us if this works or not to get you, the best of the best, into the federal government ecosystem so you can start helping us truly innovate and keep modernization a normal part of the procurement process.
Yeah, that is fantastic, Brett.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So, Dan, from your perspective, are you seeing any return on investment with these activities already?
Well, it's really incumbent upon, on the programmatic side, which I'm from now and I manage now, to stay abreast of what's going on the procurement side and where the innovations are. And so the GSA Senior Procurement Executive has put out a Procurement Innovation Resources Center online, gsa.gov/PIRC, P-I-R-C. It's a great resource to learn about commercial services openings, which is a non-FAR approach to purchasing activities, as well as the Small Business Innovation Research Program. There's new ways to buy, and the program people need to go up the learning curve. The procurement people inside the federal government need to help educate us to figure out where we can make ends meet. And on the industry side, you need to know which way the wind is blowing so you can tack with our general direction.
If I could, I'm glad Dan brought up the PIRC, because this is one thing I think is very unique at this point right now. It's only DoD and GSA that can utilize this non-FAR-based acquisition method. And I think for areas like artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, machine learning, some of these new technologies which have implications not only on the battlefield but also on the home front, it's very important to allow these vendors to get into both military and civilian side of government procurement to really kind of push these technologies forward for human-centered, user-centered, citizen-facing work, as well as just general defending our nation against whatever threats that may, Hondo is helping us deal with all around the world. I think it's very important to get that just general flood of knowledge and resources in all sides of government procurement and all sides of government technology to really integrate these systems with one another.
So in this audience, there's normally a lot of technology startup or emerging technologies being represented here. Could you walk us through like a 3-step process where they can engage? And you mentioned GitHub. Is it as simple as just registering with GitHub? Or are there other hoops you need to jump through before you get to that stage?
So to give us feedback, GitHub is a great place, no matter whether you're involved in the government marketplace or not. I mean, you don't even need an account. It's public. I think github.com/GSA/COE-acquisitions. That's a great place to kind of start to find what we're doing. That's just general feedback, right? Even if you're not involved, I want to hear best practices in industry about how you go about procuring some of these new technologies. I mean, some of these Fortune 500 companies, I think someone was mentioning, we're more or less the same bureaucracy-wise. They've already done the things we're trying to do. So let's learn from them how they bought it and how they got it done right.
You're assuming commercial industry is better. No, not always. But.
Well, there's lots of things to learn from industry, but at the end of the day, we do have our own unique world. I mean, the same way you go and work with any of those companies, they're going to have their own unique processes that work for them. So that's definitely the first place to start, to just see how we're doing the buying. The next thing would be to get yourself in the GSA marketplace. Fastlane for Schedule 70 is probably going to be one of the quicker ways. Springboard, I think, as well, is another great way to kind of jump head first and really fast track your entry into the government marketplace. And then after that, it's really just spend as much time as you can going to events like these and finding out where the winds are blowing in terms of just general government procurement, so you can kind of align yourself to providing those solutions that government not only needs not only wants, but needs and doesn't know that they need, right? That's the statement of objectives talk from right before us. That is what we really kind of emphasize at COE as well, because when you're developing technology, you have no idea what's going to come up, especially on an agency-wide scale, when you start to find these shadow pockets of IT, these different organizations that found something that worked for them and they don't want to kind of blow their cover by sharing it with everyone else and really kind of making it too big to actually work well. So you find little pockets all throughout a government agency once you start work that you never expected, so you have to be able to react to that. So if you, as a government partner, you've done the GitHub and seen how we're buying, you've gotten yourself on, one of the GWACs, and now you're sitting down and having conversations, again, be candid, be upfront, tell people what works and what doesn't, because there's no better way to learn than to hear from folks on the other side of the table.
Dan, from your perspective, do you agree wholeheartedly with this, or do you think there's an element of, this is a great shiny new toy, but is it going to be adopted by the agencies and be allowed to be matured?
I would never disagree with Omid. Absolutely, I do agree. And I'm in the policy business. And in the policy business, we're trying to make sure that requirements and statements of objectives and statements of work go out well, and that they're policy compliant, that agencies are not only aware of their policy responsibilities, but also bake those into the procurements. And so what we've developed are plain language assessment tools to look at what gets posted online, to understand how many RFQs are, let's say we're scanning for 508 verbiage or something along those lines. That way we can circle back with agencies and look for ways to help them get the requirements compliant, not just compliant, but also forward-leaning into the future.
So does that reduce the cycle time or improve quality? What was the objective, going to the objectives of that?
Right, that's the hope. Usually if we see something go out, you can't get into a time machine and tap the contracting officer on the shoulder and say, hey, if you could add a paragraph here, it's going to be great. But it's our job to help educate agencies, procurement officials, and program people that are approving these documents before they go out to make sure that they're in the best shape they can.
Okay, so we've got 5 minutes left. I'd like to open up some questions from the audience here. We ran out of time on the previous 2 panels, and I know there's some great questions normally come forward. Anybody? Is there a microphone? Yeah.
I'm not actually very loud, so that's helpful. Jackie Myers, I'm with Booz Allen, and one of the things that we're really focused on, I know there's a center of excellence for, is customer experience. And a limitation from a procurement perspective is that everything happens in agency silos. So even though the same customer for the government might need Medicare and Social Security and HUD benefits, it's happening through the silos. Are there any efforts to bring that together so there can be a cross-agency customer experience?
Oh, if only. That would be great. What a fantastic idea. No, I think customer experience through this process and through this administration has raised a new level of priority. Agencies are setting up their individual customer experience officers. We have one at GSA. She's doing a marvelous job. The silos are not just agency by agency, they're internal, right? And so a lot of what we're doing is getting our own houses in order, and I think that could be the right evolutionary step to have a better customer experience for the taxpayer, for the American public as they interface. But I know that as GSA has leaned forward into this, the cross collaboration, especially when we look at what the 21st Century IDEA Act has asked us to do even with our web presence, and having the CXO, the Customer Experience Officer, take a lead in that space and saying, our web presence needs to be of one voice in GSA, and how can we, as an orchestra, all play our instruments to harmonize with each other, I think is great. And so I'm bullish on that notion. Definitely, I think we're pointed in the right way.
I think what we're doing with COE efforts is hopefully getting us to that, where we're centralizing a lot of the knowledge we're gaining from the contractor teams that have helped us at USDA, at HUD, now are going to help us with OPM and all the future agencies. All the knowledge we're gleaning from folks that have worked with us is being deposited, in essence, in the government knowledge database. So when we go to the next agency, we are a step ahead because of the things we've learned from industry, and we're able to kind of push that envelope further every single time we do it. And then just even on a practical level, one of the things that we have done in an attempt to kind of make it more explicit that breaking down these silos is required is put a section in our RFQs. In the HUD Phase 2 buys, Section 1.4 literally has bullet points that explains how you have to work with other centers and other teams within that agency itself as kind of our first steps to say, hey, this is an implicit, this is an explicit requirement. Break these silos down. There's no other way to do it other than tell you it's required, and you're not going to get paid unless you do it, more or less, right? So it incentivizes that kind of collaboration across teams internally and externally.
Yeah, to help keep the COE materials fresh as well if it's enforced, right? I think one of the dangers of COE artifacts is they're collected and collected.
Yeah. They find a digital shelf someplace where they collect digital dust, right?
Electronics record management is moving the binders from the shelves to the cloud, right? But no, I think that one of the big hopes of what we are doing with COE is to keep our technology fresh. So this is actually, the Discovery BPA has a 3-year period of performance rather than a 5 or more, because we want to make sure our industry partners, A, refresh their own solution offerings, and B, keep those prices competitive, because you understand, hey, I could be swapped out. They aren't going to have me on board long enough to get locked into me. I really have to do a good job. So that's something that we need to do for the American citizen, right? And if you really are as good as you claim to be, your work should speak for itself, so you shouldn't be afraid of this, right? And we want to make sure we do this in a friendly way, which is why we want the collaboration across industry, why we are putting all of our documentation out in the open, and that indefinite RFI is what we're calling it. It's a Google form on our GitHub repo, and we will never shut it down. Just throw us any thoughts you have based on the templates you see there, and that's how we're going to improve our work from buy to buy, because the procurement packages are our product, right? This is our product on the acquisition side. Tech folks develop code, Navy builds nuclear submarines, we put out procurement packages.
Yeah, so with 3 persons, 11 million products, and I hope you have some AI on the background there.
Yeah. Well, it's the open sourcing our knowledge, right? I mean, we can't do this without cooperation, collaboration. So we were forced to use GitHub in essence because we need other folks' help. We don't have the resources, right? We're as lean of a startup as you can get in essence.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think we're out of time. Any final question that can be answered really quickly? Or if not, catch up with these 2 folks after this event. I'm sure you'll be hanging around. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.